I don't know where I'm at.
Hello, everybody. This is the Ultra Stream first episode here with Alan Thomas. Before we get started, I want to send a big shout out and thank you to all the people over at Patreon/Doomcock who supported me last week. For those who don't know, my father had a stroke last Thursday, and this last week's show got pushed off to this week. It was a crazy week, and I got a lot of love and support from everybody. I just wanted to say thank you. But we're going to kick it off right tonight. I have Alan Thomas, who's a Bigfoot researcher. You've seen his work on Finding Bigfoot. You were Monsters and Mysteries in America, Chasing UFOs, and you also co-hosted Paranormal Central. And this would really surprise me, Alan. You opened for Art Bell for 3 years on Dark Matter Radio.
Yeah, we Paranormal Central. We opened for 3 years.
That's got to be something. The Art Bell's a legend, so to be opening for him for 3 years. I mean, you must be doing something right.
Yeah, it was. We were actually getting as many views as him too on his Dark Matter network. It was pretty cool.
That's pretty incredible. Something I find interesting about you, I heard you mention it on one of your previous live streams, was that you were not always a believer in Bigfoot.
No, I made fun of people. You know, I didn't. I grew up in Yosemite. I mean, in the mountains. You know, I'm a mountain guy, so I mean, by the time I was 27 years old, I started hunting and tracking as soon as I could probably walk. They had me out there. And I mean, we went to the wilderness, you know, and every weekend, it didn't matter if it was snowing or raining, you know, I would wake up, they would just put a little cot by the car, and they would sleep inside the car and I would sleep on the cot. I would wake up with 8 inches of snow on me. I mean, I never saw anything, right? For 27 years of my life, I shot a lot of deer and game and stuff like that and learned how to clean it and butcher it. But I never saw nothing ever. I mean, there was some times when there were some things that would happen and that I couldn't explain, but it was like, you know, just my imagination running away with me or whatever, you know, until
that's kind of what you think, though. You run into a lot of people. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I've never seen a Sasquatch, but there's lots of people who've never seen Sasquatch.
Right.
And it really does. But then again, I've never seen a mountain lion in the wild, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Hey, I mean, there, like, how many people, like, it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It was the first time I saw a porcupine in the wild. And they're all over. I mean, I could see you know, I know what they do to trees and stuff like that. They eat the tops of the trees, the new part of the trees. So I mean, I never saw one, and we shot it and ate it, made spaghetti.
What do you do with the porcupine or the quills?
We just started with the belly, you know, and skinned them that way and skinned it off and then just threw them away. I didn't know what to do with them, tell you the truth. I don't want to mess with them too much.
What was the big changing of your mind? Like, what was your first experience where you went, oh man, these things are real?
I was on a deer hunt and I had a bear tag and 2 deer tags. And where I live at, a bear tag is a big deal. It's like a drawing to get one. And then you had to be in a drawing to get the second deer tag also, which would be a doe. Normally we just shoot, you can go get a tag and it's a buck tag and it has to be a forky or better. But only this time I had 5 pig tags, a bear tag, 2 deer tags. And I had a Weatherby 300 Magnum that I had bought. And I wanted to try it out long range, right? Like shoot some 600, 700 yard shots.
Wow.
And I mean, I bought like a $900 scope with a rangefinder in it. And I mean, it was like 6x18 variable with the rangefinder. So, I mean, I had it all dialed in. I reloaded my own rounds for it. I could put 5 shots and cover it with a dime as long as it was a cold barrel. Saying I know, you know, when you're hunting, it's always a cold barrel. So I always sight it in on a cold barrel not a hot barrel.
Yeah. Your first shot's going to be different than your second once it heats up.
And as it heats up, once it's hot, then if you sight in for a hot barrel, you can do that too if you're gonna be plinking or whatever. But only we'd been there like 9 days at a trailhead that goes over the Sierras into Nevada, and there's no roads or anything, just pack horses and hiking is all that can go through there. And we were right at the trailhead, and we camped for 9 days right there. And that's why I think when this thing came down walking to us, I don't think he knew we were in the car. Or actually it was a truck with a cab over camper, because all summer long people were parking there and leaving their cars for weeks on end, and then they'd cross the Sierras and then get a ride back to their car and pick it up.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Or they would park a car, drive all the way around, and somebody would drop them off, and then they would hike over and then pick up their car and go home.
Yeah, that's something I've done commonly. So you think the Sasquatch came down and just thought these were empty cars like per usual?
Right, yeah. And then when I started bumping around in there, I watched him for over an hour.
Really?
And, yeah. I mean, he was up on the hill, and I thought it was a bear at first. He was bent over, and I seen these bushes moving, and all I could see was a butt and the back, and it looked just like a bear. And it was in the bushes, and the bushes are moving around. I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get a bear, I mean, I got all excited because that's the only thing I hadn't taken was a bear. All my family had several times, and it was going to be my first one. And I was anxious, and it was it was about 1,000-yard shot. So, I mean, I could have made the shot, but it was far and it was dark, and once I knew he was there, I could track him down, no problem. But then he stood up, and he was a man, and it was like, what the hell, like, where did he come from?
But what size? Like, can you describe the physique of him a bit?
Well, I couldn't. All I could see was the profile against the sky at that point, and it looked like he was wearing like a big you ever seen those coats that are full of feathers, and they're all real big and puffy?
Oh yeah, like a puffer jacket.
Yeah, and it looked like he was wearing something like that, and he was real narrow at the waist and really huge, puffed up, no neck or anything. So I thought he was wearing one of those big jackets, but he had no gun, no hat, no light, nothing in his hands. And he started walking down the mountain towards us. And at first I thought he's like, oh, hey, there's a camper, I'm going to go down and talk to these guys. But he was walking weird. Like, if you're a hunter, you'll know what I'm saying. When you're stalking something, you only walk a few steps and you stop and you freeze, you don't move, and you just look around and make sure that you can move again, right? And you keep doing that until you get close to the animal that you're wanting to bag. Well, he was walking like he was stalking something, but there was nothing. I mean, I could see all of him most of the time, and then sometimes he would go behind a bush and it would be like waist high to him. And I still hadn't any size reference yet. And it was right before the sun came up when we first saw him. And as he came down the mountain, it was getting brighter and brighter, and when he stopped, finally, it was like maybe 35 or 40 yards from us. He stopped, and he was doing his signature 15-minute frozen stand there thing that he had done all the way down the mountain. So really, I could have watched him maybe 2.5 hours. I mean, it was a long time.
That's an incredible like witnessing, to be able to sit there and watch it for that long.
And all the way, like, first it's a man, and then, hey, what like where did he come from? He must be from LA. We made fun of LA people, Los Angeles, because they come up and they buy a rifle the first time and they get their deer tags and they have no idea what they're doing, and they're actually scary.
Do you remember like what the first like emotional response is when you realize, oh, this isn't a person, this is a Bigfoot, this is real?
Yeah, my eyes started watering. I got goosebumps all over my whole body, and I wanted to run. Actually, like I was fighting the urge to run, and I started making dumb mistakes. Like inside, it was a single cab, so no, I couldn't. It was a big old long rifle, and I couldn't get the scope to, inside the cab. I couldn't get the rifle and scope lined up where I could look at him through the window. And I really wanted to see his face. I could see everything really good. Like he looked like he had been on steroid diet. And I mean, he was ripped, man. I mean, huge, ripped, everything ripped. And I mean, like what really was drawing my attention was the balls of the shoulder, where the shoulder sockets.
Oh yeah.
They were bigger than basketballs.
Good Lord.
It was huge, and I was like pissing my pants almost, tell you the truth. It was like, that doesn't belong here, like what the hell is it? And so I started banging around, and finally it's noticed that there was somebody in the car, and I could tell by the way he was posturing himself, not by his face, but he was getting ready to run like a human does. And all of a sudden he took off, and I jumped out of the truck and threw the rifle down, but he was running so fast I couldn't look in the scope. I was just like following with my eye over the scope. And as soon as he stops, I'm going to drop my eye down and look at him. And my buddy was yelling at, don't shoot him, don't shoot him. He's human, he's human. I mean, he was hollering at the top of his lungs. And I'm like, I'm not going to shoot him. I'm not going to shoot him. And that fast, as I just said that, he ran 200 yards and then went behind a pine tree and disappeared.
I've heard a lot of witnesses say how fast they are and how they can't even get a bead on a rifle with them.
He was moving so fast, faster than anything I ever saw in my life since even. I mean, I've seen those things since, and they're all like that: powerful, graceful, fast ninjas, like using every little thing of the woods to hide theirself, whether it be crawling around on their belly or whatever. But when he went behind the tree, then it was like, okay, I gotta go find out where he went. I waited like 20 minutes for him to come out, because most animals, deer, bear, mountain lion, whatever, coyote, it doesn't matter, they'll run up to a tree and they'll go behind it and they'll peek out, but then they'll continue on running, right? They don't know that they could put the tree between you and it and run away where you can.
Yeah.
Right. This thing did that. It knew about the tree. In fact, there was the only tree. It was tree line. It was the only bushes and a few sparse trees.
So this thing knew enough he knew where to go.
Yeah. If it went straight for where he could get cover and then run away without us seeing where he went. And the tracks from where he started running to the tree was 15 feet apart. That blew my mind, man. Even deer hopping and jumping and everything, they're only like 7 feet, like. I mean,
that's one of the things I think is one of the strongest pieces of evidence is some of the tracks that they come across. I believe it was just here the winter of 2007 in Minnesota. They found I want to say it was 1,700 meter long trackway in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And these strides 5 feet, 6 feet, stride on these footprints.
Yeah.
And who's going out there in stilts walking through snow in the woods in Minnesota? It just doesn't make sense.
No, nobody does. And also this is one of the ways that you could tell if you're seeing a Bigfoot or a person, even where you live at. They're all over the place over there. where you live too.
I actually want to get your opinion on what I think might have been an encounter, but I will go back to that later.
But they tightrope walk, or like what we call tightroping it. So each footprint is right exactly in front of the other footprint. So now try walking with a 5 or 6 foot stride and be tightroping. Like it's really difficult for a human to do.
I mean, it's impossible for me. I'm 5'7", but
Right.
I can't even imagine Shaq doing that.
No way. Not for as many, like how many tracks that you said. Like if I followed them from a mile, and they were tightrope the whole way, tightrope walking. 1 foot in front of the other, and none of them were, and it was just casually walking along. I've found where they step on the baby tracks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it
So
tries to hide the baby track, right?
That's something that's been consistently with reports. I think even the Patterson film, there's a possibility. I think Bob Gimlin said that there was trackway of it leaving on tape, but then he said that night it must have come back because there was tracks in the morning, and they suspected it must have had a young'un that it tucked away somewhere and hid and returned to grab it. And I find it really interesting that so many witness accounts witnessing them with youth, whether it's riding them or they're holding them, and it really builds a picture of what kind of species this is.
Well, I have a small clip of video on my YouTube channel, and it's actually, I call it Bigfoot in the Shade. And it was about 300 yards away. I didn't take the video. It was a good friend of mine that took the video, but he shared it with me and said I could share it. But only it's a Bigfoot with a baby, and weirdly enough, or like if all that we talked about wasn't weird enough, these things know when you're looking at them, and especially when you pull a camera out, they will sit down and then not move. And they won't move until your battery runs dead. And sometimes they even make the battery go dead.
That's what I've heard this numerous times. Batteries going dead.
Yeah.
What's up with that? How are they doing that?
I have no idea. And how do they know? Like, say, like the other one I have on there is over 1,000 yards away, and it freezes soon as the camera is on it. I mean, we're all watching it, and it's digging in the rock looking for lizards or something. We don't know what it's doing. As soon as the camera is on it, it freezes like a stump. And no matter how long you stand there, and people are like, well, why didn't you stay there? Well, we tried to get closer because it was so far. When we zoomed in, you couldn't hold it steady, and the wind was blowing. It even made it worse. So actually the only real best, it was, part of the video of about a half-hour video was only like 38 seconds. And that's what I clipped out, where you could actually see it without getting throwing up, because the camera's all zoomed in and going back and forth so fast you can't see shit, like what's up with that?
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that knows cameras knows that too, But as soon as you step around the bush, I mean, and it was just like one step around this little bush where you can't see it for a split second. And when you came around the bush, it was gone.
It just knew. They knew the exact second.
Never looked at us. So how do they know, And how do they make the battery go dead and stuff like that? I mean, like.
What's the theories on why it's so private? If that's the word for it. I mean, like, why are they hiding? Why wouldn't they just be like mountain gorillas and
I don't know if they're hiding, like, like, oh no, there's humans. I think that a lot of times they're right by you. They're just playing ninja. They just don't want to be seen because they know that people come out with guns usually. Once they get seen, if they get seen enough, then people with guns, and probably the government more than anyone, they find out there's a family over there, and the government will come and take them out. I mean, we already dealt with that over here where we are. They come and tore up the whole place that where we were uh, investigating. In fact, we were investigating hanging cameras up 20 to 25 feet up in the tree so that people wouldn't steal them or even see them. You know what I mean? Nobody looks up. They walk and they're looking around the ground. They're not looking up in the tree. And they're camouflage. We tried to camouflage them, but we aimed them down and we put apples on the ground, and the apples would disappear. Like there would be shots where birds and stuff like that would come through and set off the camera, and then all of a sudden there would be like 7 or 8 dark shots on each of them all at the same time, and then they would start like malfunctioning, and then all of a sudden they would start functioning again, and the apples are gone.
That's so weird. And that's something else that you hear. I think even Les Strout experienced that on his Survivor Man Bigfoot series.
Yeah.
Where it just, they seem to know how to take out cameras. They seem to know how to get into places.
And I think they could see IR when we first started out, we started out with security cameras, like the kind of
using the IR for the night vision.
Yeah, and we had some that would go 300 feet, see 300 feet, and shoot an IR beam out 300 feet, and we could get them in close. We learned how to elicit responses and get them close to us. And then when we knew, right where they are, you could hear them and they're like jabbering and stuff like that. And then turn the camera on, and almost instantly they would be out to the edge of the IR light. And then they really would be raising Cain because we turned on a camera and tried to catch them. And they start throwing things and, getting them upset, man.
It's interesting that they know how to play advantages, as my military past has taught me. If middle of the night someone throws a bright light on, and let's say IR, they can see that spectrum, so it would just look like a floodlight to them. They know how to use the shadows. They know how to get in there and disappear. I find that so fascinating. It's almost like they went through Sears training, but they're just animals trying to survive. Or are they just animals?
I don't know. I know we've taken military guys up there, and like I never served in the military, but I've taken cops and military guys, and when we're out walking, they'll start telling me what they're doing. Like, hey, they're pulling a flank move, and then they'll start unholstering their guns. They're flanking us, and they're keeping the high ground. And keeping us low, always keeping the high ground and flanking us, and then also walking right next to us. Like, I can't remember what they call it, but they'll just be out of view, and they'll be like right with you the whole time. When you walk, they walk. When you stop, they stop. But just only a little brief second, you can stop real sudden, and you'll hear their last little step. And they're there because of that.
Yeah, but just subtle enough to where you're not quite sure. Right. I want to tell you about a weird experience I had up in the mountains here. It's close to a location where there's about 3 or 4 BFRO reports at. But I didn't, when this happened, I was so close to the trailhead. I mean, almost within visual range of my vehicle, that I wrote it off as this is just weird, and I don't think, I'm just imagining something. I left my truck, I reached the trailhead, and I was actually at the intersection to where I was getting on to the north trail. And the sign's right there. As I'm walking down the trail, I only get about 3 feet, and I see a tree that's about as thick as a average forearm. And it snapped. No claw marks, anything like that. It just snapped about 5.5 feet off the ground.
That would be them.
Then what was weird was I pulled out my camera and I took a picture of it. And I started videotaping, and a small pebble flew into frame. And what I found really strange was this wasn't thick woods. I had a pretty good visual range all around me, where I could see, a couple 100 feet through the woods. I couldn't see nothing. I never got no weird feelings, but I kept hearing these little kind of pebble drops. I just thought that was so odd. Because I'm right there at the truck. I mean, it was people camping. This is broad daylight. I couldn't believe that would be a Bigfoot encounter. But the more I look back on that, that seems like it might have been.
Man, they're excellent at like camouflage. I mean, they'll roll up in a bunch of leaves and barely have just anything sticking out. I mean, they use every little thing. And at night, they'll crawl on their belly and they'll be within arm reach of you, and you don't even know it.
That's terrifying. As an avid hiker, that's terrifying.
It is. I mean, really, and I won't even sleep out like 3-man tent. I call it a sack lunch because
I hate to know what they call me. I'm just in a little cocoon tent, a little one person, little bivy tent.
You're a snickerdoodle or something, huh?
Yeah. I'm scared things are going to trip on me anyway when I'm out there.
Oh man!
But me and my brother had that experience also out there with the tree knockers. We had about three things knocking, and the only reason we realized this was we were cracking firewood across a tree to break it up before we went to bed, and we heard responses. Then we heard something knocking, and it came all around us. And then there was one that was very close, probably within 30 or 40 yards. And we're like, what is?
Actually, that is, I mean, you know, everybody makes fun of it on Finding Bigfoot that they, you know, whack the trees. But I swear that is one of the best ways to to start eliciting response from them. They'll yell, they'll start communicating with themselves, right? Like trying to figure out what's going on. Like, is that humans or is that somebody encroaching in our area?
I definitely got the vibe that, because our knocking was unintentional, we were just trying to break up firewood. Their knocking definitely seemed like they were strictly talking to themselves, and they never tried to match our knocking or really respond fast to ours. It was like we would knock, and then after a few moments, you'd hear one come from each different direction, and one very close, which I actually went and looked for. I had my red light on, and I would cover it up, and I would walk towards the knocking, and then I'd open up my light, and I would never find it, but it would always be about 30 yards away.
Right. It just kept that distance from you.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can move, man. And they can move like some hunters a couple of years ago, they were telling me that they found one up in a tree, like, you know, way up in the tree, like 30, 40 feet up. And in thick woods, you know, they're really big trees too, really, you know, large pine trees. And they started shooting at it because they knew it wasn't a bear. It was a monster to them. And it used trees and it leaped tree from tree to tree to tree, and it got away from them. Even though they're running on the ground and it was leaping from tree to tree, it got away.
You know who I would be really interested in asking about? I don't even know if this guy's still alive. Do you remember Eric Rudolph?
Yeah, I heard of him. Yeah.
He was a crazy person. I think he bombed abortion clinics.
But
he evaded the law enforcement agency out in the North Carolina-Tennessee border for years. And when they finally caught him, he talked about how he escaped. He used the trees. He would move by tree. Dogs couldn't track him. People couldn't track him. And I often wonder, he was out there for years. I wonder if he saw anything.
I'm sure of it. You can't go out like once. This is the weird thing, man. Once you see one, or like you're caught, like right now you're learning about them, and once you get where you're out there and that's what's on your mind, when they finally allow you to see them, then after that it's going to be the floodgates opening up. Like you'll be hiking along and you'll hear a conversation just out of like so out of range that you can hear the voices, but you can't understand what they're saying. It sounds like it's just a little bit too far, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll follow you, and they'll follow you in it. And sometimes it sounds like there's a female and a male, you know. And I mean, you'll hear that all the time, this chatter stuff. But after you see one, and if you keep on going out there, you're gonna see one, especially like the more you know about them.
How advanced do you think is their communication? Because when I listen to the Ron Moorhead Sierra sounds, it really sounds like people just talking. I don't know what language it is, but it sounds like chit chat, you know?
Yeah, especially when they slow it down. I actually interviewed Ron Moorhead probably like 4 times, or was for our Paranormal Central, and and then because we were in person, so there was a lot of time to hang out afterwards and talk Bigfoot stuff, and he he knows a lot about the Native American lore like I do, and they speak all the different native languages. When you start talking with the indigenous people in the area, the Bigfoot talks their language, and they'll tell they respect him and don't shoot him and all this kind of stuff, but they really are afraid of him. I mean, that's the boogeyman, and in fact, where you live at, that's what they call it, booger.
Yeah, the booger. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes way, way, way back, and they always told everybody, like when we were kids, it was like, come in before the street lights. When you see the street lights are on, you better come home. With them, it was like, when the sun starts setting, you better get in here, because the boogers, they'll get you. And then that turned into the boogeyman, this booger thing.
How often do you think? I mean, I wouldn't think that people would be on their menu too much with all the deer and all the other animals they could go after.
I think like towards the winter time, I would say I don't think they would want like older people, but young blood, I think they would go after it.
Just like any other predator, they always go after the young. But
yeah. The weak ones and the young ones. And that, when you go back in the lore, the native lore, that is what they were after: young women and babies and stuff like that. And they liked girls, little girls.
Going into the native lore, it seems like just the last couple of years I've heard about the Sasquatch War of 1855. Is this the Native American War with the Sasquatches that people are talking about?
That one happened in Oklahoma. Yes. And there was another one that happened out here in California. So there's been more than one war with them all throughout the United States, because they because of their cannibal, I guess you can't really call it cannibals, they're not, but only their way of, taking the babies in the middle of the night and the young women. That's when they do it, is they run through the camp and grab whoever and run off. And I'm sure there was lots of times they had wars. In fact, I heard that they have like supposedly 6 fingers and stuff like that, and that's when that how thing started. Like some of them look human, and they were giant men, and they would use the how thing when they hold their hand up. If it had 6 fingers, then they had a war right then.
Wow.
Like, kill that thing right now.
That's like the Princess Bride. Wasn't Indigo Montoya going after the 6-fingered man?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Do you think what do you think brings these wars on? Do you think they get overpopulated to where they're forced to have to take on human prey?
I don't know.
Because if so, we may be in for another one here at some point, because Bigfoot seem to be everywhere now.
Man, they are everywhere now. That's something that's exciting to me. Is I don't know why, but only everything is off the hook now. Okay, UFOs are off the hook, abductions are off the hook. All, like, I just came from a ParaQuest, and in the Motherlode country, where all the miners and the 49ers, you heard about them, and the gold rush and all that.
Yeah.
And it's like really haunted, right? Super haunted. Well, now it is all that kind of stuff. Like, you hear it from all the different groups that the veil is getting thinner. Like more and more people are seeing them and having encounters, and more people are having encounters with Bigfoot. More and more people are having alien encounters of the closest kind, stuff like that. I mean, it is off the chart. And now down here where I live, we're the breadbasket of the world. That's what they call it. But we grow everything. I mean, absolutely everything. And it's real fertile. And we started finding them in the oranges and the citrus and stuff like that. But there would be peaches and plums and grapes and nuts and all kinds of different stuff, that that's all around it. And we started finding them using the rivers and the canals and the wild creeks and stuff coming out of the hills. And they're using it like a highway. And if the river went through a little town, then they were right in the middle of the little town and knocking people's garbage cans over like dogs, and going through garbage and stuff like that. Lots of reports of that. And I never heard of that before. I mean, I've been doing this 30 years, and then just in the last 3 years, all kinds of reports are coming in that's only 10 minutes from my house, when I used to drive 3 hours, to go to the areas where we went. Now I don't even go that far. I'm out looking around, right around in my pretty much backyard. It's amazing. Oh, did I lose you? Did I lose the... Did I lose my signal? No, I'm still here, I think. Okay. Yeah, something going on with your system, like maybe a slowdown on your internet or something. But the call shows still good, so... Hmm. It says I could turn my camera on. I don't know where to go to look at the video. What I'm doing here at all. Because I think somewhere, right? Like a video thing. I'm just on this screen. Like try to do another call. Hear me or...